Ulf Ewaldsson. Join me up here, please, today, our Chief Technology Officer, Ulf Ewaldsson.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you.
You finished up, you were part of the last panel yesterday. Review it a little bit for us. What did you go home thinking about?
Well, I think one very important takeaway from yesterday and from the day before is that the business in transformation, what we are describing this year in the Innovation Forum, is another step on the road towards the network society. If you reflect back, for instance, when we were in Brazil last year, we were still describing at that point a lot of the innovation power among operators, some external influence, a little bit. We were listening to the telecommunications minister in Brazil and his view of the market, some of the financial investors into the market and so on. Here in Tokyo, we are describing a world where the demands on the networks are coming from other industries, where other industries are making use of the technology that we are providing in our industry, and therefore moving us another step towards the network society.
And that's actually not such a simple conversation, understanding how to have the technology be right, how to have it be flexible enough, and how to always stay a couple of steps ahead. Which is really what today is going to be about. And I'm going to let Ulf take over and be the host for the day. But first, I don't know, how many of you have already met Ulf in an interview? And those of you who haven't yet are perhaps scheduled with him today, but here's a little bit of information. Ulf has actually lived in Japan.
I have, 10 years ago.
10 years ago, for how long?
For 1.5 years.
For 1.5 years.
It was very short.
But through a nice twist of fate and networking through life, you met a friend actually not in Japan, but later in Sweden.
Yes. Who is Japanese?
Who is Japanese?
He lived in Sweden.
Okay. So right. So the back and forth and ships in the night, and eventually you met, you became friends.
Yeah. And
even the business contact is very close and important today, am I right?
It is, and you will meet him later.
You will meet him later. Exactly. I'm going to let you have that conversation with him, and so we'll see you later during the question and answer period. But right now, I leave the floor to Ulf to give us a little bit of perspective and start the thinking on technology.
Thank you very much, Dolly, and good morning to you all. This session or this day where I will try to guide you with the help of some interesting speakers through the Get Technology part, technology piece, more on what we talked about yesterday. We talked then yesterday about business in transformation, leading that to networks in transformation, and today we're going to get into technology in transformation. Our vision, the strong vision we have of the network society, where everything that can benefit from a connection will have one, is a very important piece in this. We believe that so much can be done with the technology that is provided to build the network society. One of the reasons why we believe in the network society is because everything around us, more and more things, are contained in microprocessors. And if you're fresh out of school, programming software, making software for microprocessors, I'm pretty sure that you're almost going to demand that the stuff that you're doing is going to have to be connected. It's only by things really are connected that we can truly build a strong software platform. We are in the middle of Tokyo, and of course when we are here in Tokyo we need to understand the questions about megacities. 30% of the world's population live on 1% of the landmass, which is a stunning fact in itself. 50% of the population live in cities today, if you make the city definition a little bit wider. In 2050, we say that about 70% of the population will live in cities. They will generate, already today, they generate 60% of the world's traffic in the system. So it is a very important link to our industry already today in terms of what the cities are creating. There are a lot of talks about how to build these sustainable cities, particularly in emerging markets. There was a book out called Breakout Nations by Sharma who discussed this topic among other things. Global cities are becoming the centerpiece of modern economic development. We need to develop these places in a sustainable and practical and intelligent way. There are many focus projects all over the world, in the European Union and in other places, which are dealing with these matters. And we believe that the industry that we represent, the ICT industry, is one of the key pieces of making such a world really happen. It is a world where connectivity will be everywhere. So let me just reflect on some of the very, very important industrial trends. And one, of course, is mobility. I think there is almost not a company now that doesn't have a board who is asking you, so what is your mobile strategy? What are you going to do in terms of mobile? Are you going to build an app? Or are you going to move the entire software supporting our products into clouds, providing mobility in one way or another? We see questions in Ericsson coming in from all kinds of industry regarding how they can make use of mobility in a much better way. There is not a moment, for instance, for myself, when I go to Silicon Valley, where I don't meet other companies thinking about how mobility can be achieved. Two other important parts: broadband. Everything is now broadband. There is no more narrowband. PCM 64 links are dead out. This is all about the different bandwidth. And bandwidth, of course, is needed to connect the clouds of the world. Cloud is such an important trend that I would say that it will have a bigger impact in our industry than when we created mobility in the first place, which is a very profound change. It provides us with opportunities of building our networks differently, but it also provides us with one of the biggest opportunities ever to tie our industry very heavy to the IT industry. And we're seeing more and more mergers between industries. The networks that we are building are becoming media-centric. And more than 40% of the traffic in the mobile part of all traffic, mobile traffic in the world, is now video frames, which is, of course, a tremendous big change in a very short time. So you could say that the networks that we build are becoming media delivery networks to a very large degree. And that affects the technology we're using and how we're building them. Regulation of our industry is coming back as one of the key topics. It is important for regulators to understand that they have changed roles from just being regulating spectrum through auctions into becoming the enablers of GDP growth in countries. It is actually so that the operator's role has changed from being just providing voice between their individuals who are in the networks to provide the opportunity for other industries in that country or globally to distribute their material through the operators. They become enablers, and the regulators of them become enablers. The networks that we build become a very centerpiece of society in itself, taking care of the payments, all the other things, for instance, that we talked about yesterday, other industries building their applications, making use of these networks as we're moving into this kind of society. That raises questions then about data security, about integrity, and about what is allowed and not allowed to look at in these networks. A very big legal debate going on right now. So regulation is on a big rise. Let me just reflect on some of the trends with our customers then. They are thinking about the scarce spectrum. You remember we have said that spectrum will become more scarce than oil in this kind of scenario. Every kind of spectrum combination, we heard yesterday from KT, for instance, talking about how they're making best possible use of their license, remembering that for a mobile operator, the most important asset they have is their frequency license. They continuously focus on traffic growth, moving that focus even from traffic growth, managing traffic growth. We're building equipment, so we're following Moore's law, which means that basically we are doubling the capacity every 18 months. But at the same time, the traffic growth is very big, and that has to translate into a real focus on end-user performance. the enterprise is coming back into fashion. Why is that happening? That's happening because the clouds makes the enterprise move out their infrastructure into clouds. The clouds are connected through the networks. The mobility trend drives the opportunity for these clouds to provide new services. Otherwise, that means that the operators are refocusing their attention to the enterprise. This becomes very complex in terms of network management, and there's a huge focus in the whole industry of how to manage this complexity and create higher and higher layers of abstraction. We'll come back to that. We're moving from nodes to systems, and what that means is that we have talked for years about end-to-end, but as I said yesterday, we're moving from a vertical-oriented industry with different nodes and different partners to a much more horizontal. SDN is a technology that is making that happen in a large way. And last but not least, the trend of the blurring borders between IT and ICT and telecommunications industry. These blurring borders making that we will use more technology from the IT side and the IT industry will use more technology from the networks. This is putting a lot of pressure downwards, you could say, on the networks, and that's back to what we're trying to achieve here in this year's meeting, trying to present to you how this really looks, going all the way from the consumers. This is really an outside-in world now, where the consumers are deciding how we build the networks eventually through this chain, where consumers, their behaviors, their expectations, their willingness to pay is deciding how content providers are building their services, cross platforms that they are using, influencing how devices are being built, and devices in a broader sense, and then eventually getting down to the requirements on the networks. And if you translate that over, you can say that the consumers are deciding, here's an example, we will hear later from Facebook, for instance, and then the devices we will hear very soon about. So this is the flow, you could say, also of the day-to-day to follow how this influences the networks. At the end of the day, we will see how we have created an outside-in view, starting all the way from the consumer behaviors and the consumer demands, which coincidentally also starts where you started 2 days ago. So you are following us on this journey through the day-to-day. And at the end of the day, that will impact how Ericsson and how our industry are building the networks of the future. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me then start this journey by going back to the device side and what's happening in media, how it's putting new demands, and we're talking big devices here, televisions for instance. Let me introduce to you my good friend, Executive Vice President of Sony Corporation, Mr. Ewaldsson. Please.